Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast and welcome to our second episode. Really quickly, before we get into everything for this episode, I just want to say thank you. I got a lot of positive feedback for our first episode, people saying that they really enjoyed the podcast, the sound quality was good, that they enjoyed it. That meant a lot to me. Granted, it was from mostly people that we know, it was from my family, but I don't care. Just the fact that people took the time to sit down and listen to us and enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to me.
So yeah, that meant a lot to us. That really made us very happy. We have a lot that we want to go over in this episode, and we kind of went back and forth on how we wanted to outline everything and have it go.
There's a whole page of what we were going to do, then what we decided on, and then what we're doing now.
Yes, and we were going to kind of actually originally break this up into two parts, but then I realized we can't really talk about our relationship without also talking about the RV and all of the renovations that we've done. Yeah. And I know that at some point we want to go over, locations that we've been to, places that we've traveled, what it's been like to travel on the road in an RV. Maybe we can do that next week. Okay. But I think to lead into everything and kind of build a story, because I am all about effective storytelling, I really think we need to talk about how our relationship grew, and through that how we discovered our love for traveling and RVing as a whole, and DIY renovations. So that's the plan for this episode, and I really hope that you guys enjoy it. Grab a beverage if you are of a mind, and go ahead.
As your yoga chick says, grab your mat, grab your water.
And let's get into it.
Well, let's start by saying that about half of our relationship has been living together, and about half of it at this point has been not living together. Mm-hmm. So that's a really big reason of why we can't talk about our past and getting together without talking about having an RV. Mm-hmm. Because about half that time we've had an RV. Mm-hmm. And
we've really jumped into life together, like with both feet.
Yeah. So do you want to start with, how we met, or the start of whatever?
Yeah, I think so. In our first episode, we talked about the fact that we met in Gitmo. Yeah. And I think that this is an area with a little bit of confusion for people who know us, because I think there's a little bit of gray area about when we met and when we actually started dating.
We knew each other for a while before we started dating.
Yes. And I mean, in the first episode, I said that, remember the first time I ever saw you and blah, blah, blah. And that was like significant to me. But I really need to emphasize, because I don't think people understand.
I'm going to go ahead and silence my phone. Rookie mistake number 2 this morning.
I really need to emphasize to people the fact that I never thought that Stuart would ever look at me. And not because I don't think that I am worth spending time with or getting to know or anything like that, but just because you were on such a different level with life.
I intentionally put on an image of leave me alone.
Yes, and it was very successful. And honestly, you intimidated me a little bit, because I thought you were so incredibly attractive and just an interesting person, but you were very unapproachable. And you maintained that facade for a really, really long time. I knew you for 3.5 to 4 years before we started dating. And during the majority of that time, I really thought that you did not care about anybody. And funnily enough, I thought you were an idiot.
Yeah, let's start by saying that I don't think I am, but I'm not trying to say that I've sandbagged anything, but I kind of know what I want to get out of things. And if people, I don't push people to believe something about me, but if they believe something about me, I'm not really going to stop them. They can think whatever they want about me. And so for a while, a lot of my time in Cuba, I just let people underestimate me by their own free will. And that makes my life a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. People leave me alone. I just do my job, go home. I do my job well, and I go home. Mm-hmm. And I guess that kind of makes it to where you got that image of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really didn't think I don't know. I'm not so much that I thought you were like a dumb jock or anything like that. I just thought you were this stoic idiot, I think. And I thought that for a really, really long time, up until, so you left Gitmo and transferred to Virginia about a year to 6 months before
about a year
before I transferred, and I selected orders and got orders for Groton, Connecticut. There's a sub base there. So, but en route to that, I had to go to a boat driving school, it's called Level 2 HPU, for people who want to know or are in the know, and that is in Little Creek, Virginia. So I transferred from Gitmo, went to Little Creek for a 2-week school, and that was where we kind of connected again. But we had been kind of chatting a little bit before that, because I had a bunch of people on Snapchat back when Snapchat was still like really, really cool.
That was the shit, man.
It was still really, really cool. And so I had a bunch of people on there that I talked to, and you were one of them. And I think we had a streak at that point of like 60 to like 80 days where we talked like every single day. And
I don't know that we were like the best friends for each other.
It wasn't anything deep. It was just like I would snap a picture at the beginning of my day, like, this is what I'm doing, and I would send it to the people that I talk to every day.
Or something funny. It's like typical Gitmo shit.
Yeah. And I would send it to you. Yeah. And you would like talk back to me, and that was kind of how it started. And then when I got to Virginia, I was there with one other person that I had known in Gitmo, and I knew that there were a bunch of people in that area, because in Virginia you have Norfolk, you have Little Creek, you have Portsmouth, you have Yorktown, which is where you were, a bunch of military bases. And so when I wasn't in the school, which was, you know, a pretty easy, fun time.
It was a 9 to 5 kind of thing for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I had a bunch of free time, and so I was like trying to get everybody together. I was like a social butterfly at that point.
You were.
And so I was hitting everybody up like, hey, we're all in the area. Like, let's go get together. Let's go to Busch Gardens. Let's go to the beach. Let's go down to, you know, Virginia Beach, the strip down there. And so we started hanging out.
Let's go out to eat.
Yeah, we hung out a bunch of times. And it was very casual. And I was excited to see you because you were just a familiar face. And I had really, really loved Gitmo too. I was sad to leave. And so seeing familiar faces from then felt kind of like a touchstone to home.
Reminiscing.
Really. Yeah. And we all spoke the same language and understood the same jokes. And so I was really excited to see you, but I never thought that like you would ever be interested in me. And I'm really curious, like, what was going through your mind when we were hanging out in Virginia?
Oh man. Well, like she said, we talked on Snapchat for a while, and then I was like, I knew from a long time ago that you were really attractive, and not that I was intimidated by you, but I just probably wasn't. It wasn't you. I just wasn't really interested in anybody. But I can remember it was like, well, she's always been locked down with somebody, and she already knows what she wants, and I had no hint that you thought I was attractive or liked me, thought you were just friendly. And we were with that guy that you knew and that I knew from Cuba, and then another guy in that school. But it became very apparent very quickly that, you know, it was you and I talking to each other, and it was him and that other dude talking to each other.
Yeah.
And so it was you and I being together, talking, just being social, and it was like, that was my real opportunity at getting to know you. I'd clearly spent more time with you in Cuba previously.
But it was like in a work setting.
Yeah, in a work setting, like at the range. I'm trying to go over how to shoot with somebody, like, okay, now you need to put the bolt forward.
I'm like, Griffin, I need help. I haven't shot the M4 since A school. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, she's not like the exceptional idiot there. It's sometimes if you only are handling a weapon once a year, I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
But we became very social, and I was like, I'll see what happens. You know, I was, not that I was like feeling frisky or anything, but I was like, I'm just going to be like, hey, I need your number, because, and it's true, but your Snapchat conversations, they disappear as soon as you leave that page. And we were
trying to like coordinate plans to hang out.
And come to find out, if you save somebody's conversation, they know you save it.
Yeah.
So it was like a double-edged sword. I was just like, I'm just going to tell her I need her number so we can, because it's hard to communicate. And you gave me your number. And it was just the being very social. And I was like, she's really attractive, and she's actually being friendly with me. I was like, this might work. I don't know. I mean, there's something different about it.
Mm-hmm.
So how was that from your perspective with us spending time together in Virginia as friends?
Well, just to like circle back a little bit to what you had said about me being like tied down, I was in two semi-serious relationships during my time in Gitmo, and that was a little bit of a double-edged sword because on the one hand, because I was in those relationships, I'm a very dedicated person. So when I'm with somebody, that person is my only focus. I'm not going to go mess around with other people. That relationship is my priority.
So that's good for me now.
Yes, it's good. It's a good thing, and it was a good thing because it kept me out of trouble. If you know anything about the military and
Drinking
the environment, it can be really like smarmy, honestly. So it kept me out of that. But at the same time, it did kind of keep me from getting to know people that I kind of would have liked to have gotten to know, not even in a romantic sense, but just the relationships that I was in were not necessarily the best, and so socially I didn't have some opportunities that I would have liked, and we can get into that stuff later at some point if we need to. But I had been in serious relationships, and it just ended up working out that in Virginia, literally like the week of us starting to hang out, I got dumped. And it was upsetting, but at the same time, I kind of was expecting it just because that relationship was not healthy. And so I was like, you know what? This is my opportunity to really own the fact that I am independent and single, and I can like make intentional decisions for who I want in my life, the manner that I want them in my life, how I want my relationships to develop. I felt like I kind of came into myself in in an adult sense, and I had a self-awareness that I didn't have before. And so us being able to hang out as friends was really cool because I was like, this is my chance to get to know people and not feel uncomfortable because like I'm in a controlling relationship with somebody that's going to freak out that I'm like friends with somebody. And also I don't have to rush into anything. Like I can really take my time, and like I wasn't in a position at that point where I wanted to be in a relationship anyway. Like,
neither of us were really.
Yeah, and we even had a conversation at the beach.
Joking about.
Yeah, where we were like, yeah, you know, I don't think I want to be in a relationship. Like I think I'm totally happy right now just being single. Like we were both like, yeah, we're just going to finish out our contracts and go get jobs, you know. Like I was like, I just want to go work in the woods somewhere and be left alone and like maybe have a dog. And Stuart was like, yeah, you know, I think that's kind of what I want to. And that it's funny that we had that conversation because we were both like, yeah, we don't want to be in relationships. Like screw relationships, they're a lot of trouble. Like we're happy on our own. And I genuinely was like, I was very happy on my own. I was happy just doing my thing. You were too. And yeah, it was interesting. It was really cool. That part of our relationship, quote unquote, if you can call it that, because we weren't really together, we were just friends. But
it was built on a friendship. Yeah,
that was really cool. I had never had that before. It was a very natural progression. So
when I found out that you were single after being in Cuba in that last relationship, and how you'd been carrying yourself and kind of the details of it, some minor details of it, it was like, wow. You know, you were very dedicated in your relationships, but then you carried yourself so well after it. I was like, that's a strong woman. So that was something that I very early on respected about you, is how strong you could be through adversity and, you know, through changing cycles in your life.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about, this is just kind of a funny thing, and I didn't find out about this until probably a year into us being together. Do you want to talk about what happened at Busch Gardens?
Oh. So
you don't have to, do you?
Sure. Yeah, you put me on the spot, and people are going to be like, what happened? Well, you know, Snapchat was the thing then, right? Well, we were walking, and I was like, oh my gosh, she has a really nice butt. And I took a picture of her butt, and I sent it to my buddy. He already knew you. He was like...
You were like, guess who I'm with?
Guess who I'm with? And he knew whose butt that was, too. But
not as if I was out there showing my butt to everybody.
No,
I want to make that very clear.
No, she was wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, and I was like...
And it wasn't like just my butt. It was really my like back profile.
Yeah.
But mostly.
I mean, the center of everybody's attention when they look at you from the rear is your rear. So, yeah, that was funny.
And then you saved it though. And then like a year later, you were like, look what I have. And I look and I'm like...
Why do you have a picture of my butt? Where's that at?
And I was like, that's Busch Gardens. And I was like, Stuart, we weren't even together then. And you're like, what?
I'm just looking.
I just think that that's funny. Maybe that's a little naughty, but I don't care. I think it's hilarious. And given how everything worked out, I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah. It'd be different if I was a creeper.
Yeah, you're not. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the progression of our friendship. And things really like, so I left level 2 and I transferred up to Groton. And when I got there, transferring in the military, doing a move, it's a nightmare. It just always is. And I think especially going from an overseas command to a stateside command, I had gone to level 2 first, and then I had to move, and then I had to find an apartment. I didn't have a vehicle. Like, that entire thing wiped me out financially.
That's a stress fest.
It was a massive stress fest. That was the hardest up financially that I have ever been. I was completely broke. I found the cheapest apartment that I possibly could, that wasn't like a closet, and I had no furniture, no like plates or anything like that, because no like cookingware, because I didn't have a lot of that stuff anyway, and when I left Gitmo, I left a lot of that stuff with my ex anyway, because we just like shared household goods at that point. So I didn't have anything, and I didn't have a vehicle either. And I was so stressed out, and there was nothing up there. And
well, you said you saw some.
Yeah, but they were overpriced for what they were. Like
rust buckets.
Yes, like I went and looked at a Ram 1500 that I really liked, but they were asking like $25 for it, and I had a pre-approved loan for $17, and it was like eaten up with rust and everything. And I was like, look guys, I see this damage, like I'm not paying this. And they wouldn't come down on the price, even though I had money in hand.
And I think we'd been talking just still as friends at that point, and I ended up knowing this guy. If you know anything about Virginia and the military, there's a car dealership. Mm-hmm. There's like actually 12 probably within a couple miles of leaving base. Mm-hmm. And I happen to know a guy, and nothing against him, but he's just another car salesman at another car dealership that his brother owns. But I knew a guy, and I knew that if he didn't have a vehicle, that he might be able to find you a vehicle. So I put out a feeler with him, and he sent me the list of his inventory, and then I sent it to you. And you picked out the truck that you have now. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I like that. And
I asked you to go and look at it for me. I was like, can you just go look under the hood? Because I knew you were mechanically inclined. Mm-hmm. I was like, just make sure that there aren't any glaring issues.
Like it's not going to fall apart in the next 30 days.
And I picked a Tacoma because I wanted a Toyota. I knew that I wanted a Toyota something. I was actually looking at a 4Runner that somebody was selling on Craigslist, but I wanted a truck. And so I was like, go look at it for me. Just make sure there aren't any glaring issues. And I didn't know how I was going to get down there, but it's worth mentioning. And I don't know. You impressed me from the very beginning just with your overall integrity and honesty, because you made it very clear you didn't want anything from me and you were just trying to help. And when I was looking at one of those trucks up in Connecticut, there was somebody that I knew that was stationed in New York. It was a 4-hour drive. And I had asked him, like, hey, will you please come and help me? Like, because he was mechanically inclined too. I was like, can you come help me look at some of these trucks? Like, I don't know what I'm looking for. And he wouldn't do it because he said it was too far. And it was too much of an inconvenience for him. And granted, yeah, I'm sure it would have been a little bit of an inconvenience, but this was somebody that I knew had a previous relationship with years ago, and he wasn't willing to come and help me. But even though he had been like kind of casually pursuing me, when it came to putting, words behind or actions behind words, he wasn't there. But you, who didn't have any real history with me, didn't really know me past, us working together and our friendship.
It's almost like I felt bad for you.
Yeah, I believe you, because I was pitiful. It was a terrible situation. Yeah. And I was like, I need to get down to Virginia to get this truck.
you were taking an Uber or a taxi every day to base, or getting somebody to pick you up, and you're a grown woman, and you're not that you weren't succeeding on your own, that's not what I mean, but you were striking out when it came to vehicles. And I was like, I can help. Like, it's just the decent thing to do. It's just to help.
So this guy got into his truck.
This guy's in me.
Yes, this guy's in Stuart. Got into his truck in Virginia. Drove on a Saturday morning. Or
it was Saturday morning.
Yeah, Saturday morning. Drove 8, well, at that point it was like 12 hours.
That was a traffic
through
day.
Horrific New York City traffic, all the way up the coast to come and get me so that we could drive back together.
Got there in late afternoon?
No, we got there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
No, I got to where you are.
Oh, in Connecticut. Yeah, he got to Connecticut like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. We turned right around and drove another 8 hours, 9 hours back to Virginia so that I could get this truck. You had no reason to do that other than just out of being, like, you've told me many times, you weren't looking for anything, you didn't want anything from me, you just wanted to help. And that really, I mean, you wore yourself out for me to do that.
Well, I don't know, it felt like the right thing at the time. Looking back, I guess it was.
Yeah, and I would say it's worked out pretty well. So I was able to get down there and get that truck and drive back, and I had a vehicle. And from there, I mean, well, you sent me flowers. You want to tell everybody about that?
Sure. So Rebecca and I think after that, we kind of knew that each other, like, that there was something, and that there are actions behind words.
Well, and actually, just to interrupt really quick, I had told you my second night in Virginia, because I stayed one more night because we were so tired, and I told you, I was like, I just don't want to waste my time. I was like, I don't need anything now or within the next X number of years. I just don't want to be with somebody and be wasting my time.
And waste a year there, 2 years there.
Yeah. And you were like, okay.
So I mean, that gave me some direction and something to think about. So I thought about that, and clearly we are how we are today. And I made a pretty good decision. But shortly after that, I wanted to make an action, and I wanted it to be kind of a safe action. Maybe I was cowardly, or maybe it was humor that led to the note. But I had asked you if you liked flowers. In random casual conversation. I don't think you had thought about why I was asking.
No.
But it'd come up. And you're like, no, I don't like flowers. It's literally killing a plant, and you're sending somebody something that's dead, or it's going to die and brown up. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, that's a good point, yada, yada, yada. Well, little did she know I had already bought them. And they were already going to her address, because I got her address when I went up there. And so there were flowers that were headed to your way, and you didn't want them. And you ended up being on the phone with your mother, of all people. And some stranger knocked at the door and said, here you go, and handed you flowers.
Delivery man,
Yeah, handed you flowers. And
I was shocked.
Yeah. Tell it from your perspective. You take over.
Yeah, so cut flowers would not be my first choice for, like, a gift. I would rather have something that I can eat, if I'm being totally honest. That's just the way that I am. But at the same time, a gesture is a gesture, and it's really, really nice to get something like that. And I have honestly not been with too many people who had ever done something like that. Any people, I don't think, that had ever done something like that. So getting these flowers, it was like, wow, this is really special.
There's something intention behind.
What does this mean? And I was on the phone with my mom when the delivery guy showed up, and so she got, like, my play-by-play reaction. And Stuart had put a note in there that said, thanks for being all right.
Pretty all right.
Yeah, thanks for being pretty all right. And I still have that note. It's in our, like, scrapbook. And I just thought it was really, really cool, a really cool gesture. I felt bad for having said that I didn't want flowers.
It's hilarious that she liked them in the gesture.
It was the gesture.
But she had said that she didn't like flowers.
Yeah.
So I'll call that a success in my book.
Yeah.
And I won her over in some little way with that.
And so from the very beginning, there was a lot of travel. There's been elements within our relationship that have been consistent. And one of the biggest ones has been travel. Just because in order for us to make our relationship work in the early days, we had to be willing to travel to see each other. We were at a minimum 8 hours apart, notwithstanding traffic and everything like that.
Usually about 9 with stopping, food, bathroom.
And we made that work. Our making the decision to be in a relationship together was a very conscious one. We had a very long conversation about it.
Didn't just happen.
No, it wasn't like, I guess we'll be together now. It wasn't like that, because I, having had been in a couple of relationships that did not end well, I did not want to waste my time again. And I was honestly very nervous about being in a relationship again, but it needed to be a very conscious decision, and I think it needed to be a conscious decision for you too. And so we had a long talk about it, and it was like, okay, we're gonna do this. Like, this is something that we both feel it would be a seriously missed opportunity if we didn't.
It felt very genuine and very right.
And so we began traveling to see each other. I think we would see each other about once a month.
Yeah, we alternated between driving up to Connecticut or her driving down to Virginia once a month, and we correlated our off weekends, or we were lucky enough to have our off weekends correlated so that we could do that.
Yes. And actually we got a really nice,
we got a blessing.
A huge blessing early, like literally a month into our relationship, because you got orders to go do an IA, which I don't know what an IA stands for.
Individual augmentee. It's like a stateside deployment where you're not going to war, but you're
just going somewhere to help out.
Yeah.
And you got an IA to the Philadelphia shipyard, which was only a 4-hour drive from where I was at in Connecticut. So we got to see each other every other weekend while you were in Philadelphia for 6 months. So that was incredible.
I didn't know what it would lead to, and we were actually pretty nervous about it, but it ended up being a gigantic blessing, seeing each other so often. And so that's kind of the foundation of how our relationship started, is that we got 6 months of every other weekend. So we still had time to do things on our own, and we had our own space. But it very, very quickly helped build a strong relationship, and how we got to know each other, and routines and this and that and the other.
We talked constantly, but I really think that, and I would say this for any relationship, and I know people don't want to hear this because you're so attached to your person, but it is so important for the two of you to be able to spend time apart and be happy on your own. I, of course, missed Stuart terribly whenever we weren't together, but I had hobbies and interests and things that I wanted to do. I wasn't just sitting by the window pining away for him whenever we weren't together. I mean, I did do some of that, but
I did leave a couple t-shirts with you.
Yeah, but for the most part, we were together but living our own lives for the first 2 years of our relationship. And I really think that helped build a really strong relationship, because the only way that we had to make it work was for us to be very effective communicators. And communication is so important in a relationship, and I think we've learned that over and over and over again, especially with the traveling and the RV stuff and like the projects that we've taken on together. We would not be able to do it if we didn't know how to talk to each other,
and if we didn't know how to listen.
Yes. So our first big trip together after we were in a relationship was the first time that not the first time, because I went and met your family whenever your friend got married.
We stayed in hotels or family's house.
But after that, it was like, man, if we're going to do these road trips, like my family's in Indiana, your family's in Texas, like that's a huge gap. We want to be able to see family. At that point, we were still active duty, so obviously we weren't living in a home state. So we got to figure out a way to do this to where it's not like breaking the bank every time we want to go see people. And I think the truck camping was kind of your brainchild, so do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I've got a 2015 Ram, and I had a camper shell on it at the time, and trying to think about going camping, we'd wanted to go camping and stuff like that. Well, we tried to make it to where it was like a travel camping thing, and I put a platform over the bed rails up near the cab, and I went to Joann's fabric place, and I bought this. What do you call that? Foam? Just foam?
like just really, really dense foam.
It was like 6 inch.
6 inch.
Yeah, 6 inch foam. And we had a camping stove that we got. We had
water bladders,
and that was our first like camping thing. So
traveling camping.
So Rebecca came down to Virginia, and then we went from Virginia to Texas, stopped a couple times on the way.
Didn't pay for either of those.
Didn't pay for either.
We stayed on public land.
Public land. And that was really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Texas. We stayed at my folks' place. And then we went up to Indiana, stopped on the way there. And to add to this whole traveling camping thing, your dad let us use, they had a motorhome at the time. And we stayed in their motorhome at an RV park. And so little did I know, that got the wheels in my head turning, that that would be a really good option as something to have, some kind of RV,
because we've both really liked traveling and not having to pay to stay places, because we've both done our fair share of staying in hotels and having to pay for meals and so on and so forth.
If you spend $75 at a hotel and you're going to spend 5 days at it over the course of a couple weeks worth of driving and vacationing, $75 that each night, that adds up.
Yeah.
So you can invest some money into some kind of setup that's going to save you that money back. And truck camping is actually a pretty popular phenomenon now. I think it grew in popularity over the last year, with people just wanting to like get out and be outside. That's the whole van life thing.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah. But people do it in their cars, they do it in their trucks. They figure out ways to outfit what they have so that they can go travel and have somewhere to sleep and have somewhere to store their belongings. And we really liked truck camping, with a couple of caveats. The biggest thing was that the space was really small, so it wasn't super comfortable.
When it rains and you're stuck inside trying to eat lunch.
Yeah, when it rains, there's nowhere really to go. You're stuck like in a vehicle. You can't stretch out and relax. I mean, there's drawbacks to everything that you do, but I think especially with the truck camping, it wasn't an ideal scenario. It worked really well for us, but I don't think it would have been.
It's a minimal way to.
Yes,
very
it's
minimal.
Very minimal. But that did kind of introduce us to like an alternate way of doing things, and we both really liked that a lot. And so my dad let us stay in his RV, and that was like, wow, look at all this space we have. Like, we could move this thing wherever we need to go.
That's not something we thought of at that very moment.
No, but you did make a lot of comments about like, wow, this is really nice. Like, you got everything you need in here. You can really move around, so on and so forth. And so that trip was like the first big traveling trip that we did. And actually, if you are inclined and you want to, on my YouTube channel back a couple of years ago, I did a couple of videos about that. The first one being like a vlog style video about when we left Virginia and headed to Texas, and then the other one being like a tour of our setup with the truck and the camper shell, and how we had the shelf in there and the mattress really cool, and the water like we had a solar shower that we used,
that I hung on a stop sign.
I've got a really cool picture that no one will ever see. It's just for us. It's of Stuart taking a shower at a stop sign with our solar shower
in the middle of the road.
Well, yeah, but it was in the middle of nowhere.
But naked.
So anyway, that was an awesome experience. And then fast forward from there, we did that one time, and I think that was a year out from when our contracts were about to be up.
Yeah, so that was 2018. So let's fast forward to me getting out of active duty. So, as y'all know, I moved up to Connecticut, and Rebecca and I, we rented a townhouse. We moved out of that Gertie apartment, and we got a townhouse. And from there, you were still on active duty, and I was in the reserves, and I worked at Home Depot for about 9 months. But during that time, we kind of narrowed down what we wanted to do for school, continuing after active duty, and where we wanted to go to school. The next thing you think about is where are we going to live? Where are you going to live? What are you going to do for housing? And it kind of just became apparent to me, and I guess I made that decision in looked for support from you, and we thought we needed an RV because you can take the RV, and there's an RV park around the corner pretty much everywhere you go in the country, minus some places way far up north that close seasonally. So that was probably our best option. So from there, we
just started shopping.
We looked at a bunch of RVs. Man, we drove to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, and we ended up getting the RV that we have now.
And actually, at some point, not in this episode, because it really would be a good thing to just devote an entire episode to, I'd love for us to sit down and outline like tips for shopping for an RV, especially because if you're going to shop used, there's things that you need to know, there's things that you need to look for, there's certain aspects that you need to be informed of going into like a buying situation like that. A lot of common mistakes that people make, because this entire thing has been a huge learning opportunity. But I think one thing that helped us is that we didn't rush to make a decision. There were a couple of times where it was really, really hard. We found an RV that was like pretty good, and you really, really wanted to.
You're talking about the one with no slide?
Yeah, and you really wanted to get it, and I was like, no, this isn't right. We did a lot of research. We watched a lot of YouTube videos, and we got really, really lucky and found something that we both liked that was in our price range. And that was this 2013 Shasta that we have been living in for over a year now.
So we bought that in February, and in June, Rebecca's contract was up, or in May.
June?
Yeah. June, your contract was up, and I quit Home Depot, and we moved down to Texas.
And during that interim between buying the RV and moving, there was a lot of stuff that happened in our life. I was almost killed in January of 2020 by a dog that we had. That is a crazy story in and of itself.
Check YouTube.
Yeah, I have a YouTube video about it, but if you guys want to hear us talk about it, we can at some point. I don't really feel like now is the time. But that happened, and I was in the hospital for a week. I got out, and 2 weeks later, I think, in February, we bought our RV. And I don't know, it was just like all of this stuff happened, but there was no stop. And like I didn't want to like stop or take a pause or take a break or anything. It was just like, okay, I'm still here. I'm still alive. We have this plan. We have this thing that we're going to do. Like, let's chase this. And I'm honestly really thankful that we had this RV because it gave me something to really pour my energy into, because I didn't go back to work after that, really. I wasn't in a position to. So all of the spare time that I had and that you had went into getting this RV ready to go. And
by ready to go, let's just call that a renovation, not a getting ready.
There was really nothing super, super wrong with the RV aside from...
We found a leak.
Yes, and honestly, it's a good thing. I don't even really know. Like, when we got the RV, I was like, yeah, I want to paint the cabinets and... I want to paint the cabinets and, I want to pull the carpet up because the carpet's gross. But from there, it really just, we did a complete overhaul. This RV does not look in any way similar to the way that it looked when we bought it. It doesn't look
like any RV, truthfully. It looks like a house in most respects.
And it's a good thing that we went that deep because we found the water damage that we had on the slide. And that was scary, honestly, when we pulled up the flooring and we saw like the wet wood and everything. It was like, oh no,
and it was
what
in a rainy season in Connecticut.
Oh, it was really scary.
So if you buy a used RV, just real quickly, you're probably going to spend a couple grand on fixing something. Yeah,
it's inevitable. RVs at some point, especially because people don't maintain them like they should, they are going to leak. Like it's just a reality. You might as well accept it, get used to it, integrate it into your being.
Learn how to fix it.
Yes. And the good news is because RVs are notorious for these kinds of issues, there's somebody out there who's already dealt with the problem. And so there's YouTube videos and tutorials, and we got really lucky and found some RV mechanics in like the next town over who were willing to fix the damage within our budget.
And in a good time frame.
Yeah. And so they basically went in and was it epoxy?
Yeah. It's like a penetrating epoxy. So they sealed the floor. so they didn't have to cut out that section. They dried it out and they sealed it, and then the end of the slide, there was a leak on there and on the top, and they replaced all the goodies that it needed. And from there, that was us pulling out the floor when we found the issue. So after that, Rebecca said she wanted to paint the cabinets. Well, we put about 3 coats of primer on this entire place. All right, and if you've got a 12-foot or 12-inch roller, that doesn't take long. But if you've ever been inside an RV,
the walls are small.
The walls are small, and there's a ton of nooks and crannies. So we didn't just paint the cabinets. We painted this whole thing front to back, top to bottom.
And not the same color either. No. We have different color schemes in
for
all
the
the different
front
parts
and back
of the RV.
and cabinets and so.
Hindsight being 2020, whenever we do it again, there are things that I would do differently. I would not go this in depth.
I didn't know we were going to go this in depth, but it was your vision, and it looks really good now. But that was a lot. We spent a couple weeks painting.
And I vlogged that entire experience, and it was a lot of fun. But it was also a huge challenge and created some stress in our relationship too, because I mean, there have been challenges and stressors all along the way that we've had to overcome. I mean, we've had the military that throws a constant wrench into anything that you try to do. That's a big thing to overcome. There were a lot of tearful and frustrated moments that we had trying to just,
tired and hungry at 7:30 at night, and I'm trying to get something done.
Trying to figure out how to make things work. So there was that, and then there was coordinating travel to be able to see each other. Then there was, me almost being killed. That was a huge challenge for us to overcome. And then there was the RV. So all along the way, there have been things that we've had to overcome. But I truly believe that every experience that we've had has made us stronger, because instead of throwing up our hands and going, you know what, this is too much work, like I don't want to deal with this, we've come together, put our heads down, and figured out a way to get through it.
Even through present day.
And that's just the way that it is when you make a conscious decision to be with somebody. Love is, of course, the motivating factor, but there are going to be times where you still love your person, but you don't necessarily like them that much. And anybody who has been in a relationship for longer than 10 minutes knows that. And so during those times, there has to be a unifying factor, something that brings the two of you back together. And I think in this case, for us in our life, it's literally the fact that we've created this life together. We have this RV that we more or less have built up and created a home for ourselves, and neither one of us can do it alone. We need each other to continue to move forward in this life that we've built, and we both believe that we are stronger together than we are apart.
Absolutely.
And that is why what we are doing is working. But that doesn't mean that, of course, there aren't times where we get frustrated or need a minute to catch our breath or something like that. And I really think that I wondered sometimes if we would be as stressed as we've been if we had a more conventional life, because I feel like the RV and the renovations and everything in this tiny 200 square foot space, it hasn't created problems, but it's exacerbated.
Yeah, it's like I was telling my mother the other day, well, we've got a little leak that we're working on right now, but all right, if you've got a leak in like the corner of your house and it's over by the garage where you have your storage, it's something you need to get fixed, but it's not like pressing like the rest of the place is going to fall apart with it. Well, if you have a leak in an RV, that needs to be addressed at 11:30 at night. Sometimes. I mean, if you've got water on your floor, that means it came from your ceiling or your wall, and if one thing gets wet, everything gets wet, and it's not on the other side of the house from you. It's 4 feet from where you lay your head. And so everything being so close together has really forced us to learn how to communicate better, to learn how to work together better, and I think we're for the better for it.
Yeah, and even given the challenges and the things that go wrong, I mean, there have been, especially in the beginning when we had our first couple of like little hiccups and like 2 a.m. fix-it sessions because we found something that was wrong, in the beginning, I would have moments where I was like, oh my gosh, is this the end? Like, is this not going to work out for us? Those feelings have become more muted with time, and it's become less about like, oh my gosh, this is the end, and more about like, okay, this is the life that we've chosen. These are the challenges that we have to overcome right now. We're going to get through it, and it's going to be fine.
It doesn't mean there's more challenges living in this than there is in a house.
It's a 50-50 trade-off, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly a more affordable way, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be so much more stress-free or so much more rewarding. It's just you trade one thing for the next.
Exactly. And I still, even given challenges that we've had, I still really, really love this lifestyle. And I love what it's done for us as individuals and for our relationship as a whole. It's very, very unique. And it's not going to be right for everybody. And that doesn't mean that you're a lesser or better person if you don't want to live in an RV. Like, it's just a specific, as my dad says, it's a paradigm. Mm-hmm. You choose the paradigm that you want to exist within, and within that paradigm you are going to have challenges and trade-offs and pros and cons. And this is the paradigm that we have chosen for ourselves. And for the foreseeable future, I think we're going to stick with it because the pros far outweigh the cons for us.
It gives us a lot of flexibility with, while now we're going to school. Mm-hmm. And then kind of like when we got out of the military, when we're done with school, we're going to have to find a job, and we're going to have to find where to live, what to do.
And we can do all of that and not be tied down as much to a specific location as somebody would be if they had rent in an apartment or a mortgage or something like that. Yeah. So all of that said, our relationship has become very tied into the endeavors that we've taken on together, specifically just being in an RV and renovating it from the ground up. It's really cool what you can do, and especially what you can do with somebody else when they're on the same page. And this is not to say, like, if you're listening to this and you're not in a relationship but you would love to live in an RV or like renovate something and travel, you can totally do that. There are tons of people who do it alone, and you don't need to have somebody else. That's not what I'm saying at all. But at the same time, if you're going to be with somebody and you're going to do something like this, it's really, really cool when you get to do it with somebody like
somebody you love.
Yeah, somebody who you can be a team with. So that is a little bit of our past and how we got together, and some of the traveling and kind of the progression of how we went from, traveling 8 hours to see each other to traveling in the bed of a truck to now traveling in an RV. Just the renovations and the buying process and how that's impacted our relationship and how it's helped us build everything up. Stepping back, big picture, and looking at everything, it's really, really cool to kind of see the metamorphosis of how everything has evolved and changed.
That's your vocab word for the day.
Metamorphosis. Yeah. How it's, progressed over time. I'm a big, big fan of it, and I really like it a lot.
Too.
So, anyway, I think that is enough for today. We've been recording for quite some time, so
that's a good stopping point. We'll get to the other stuff next time.
Mm-hmm. I think next couple of episodes I would love to start diving into traveling, some of the things that we've learned traveling on the road, some of the places that we've been, places that we've enjoyed going to and seeing, some of the challenges that we've overcome there. I would also like to get into maybe some more
things that we're doing currently, like seasonal
things, and also maybe some how-tos for buying an RV and renovating an RV and so on and so forth. So if that sounds good to y'all, hopefully you'll stick around. If there's something specific that you would like to hear us talk about, feel free to send us a DM. You can follow us on Instagram. We have our Instagram page, Maybe We're Just Rambling. You can send us messages there, follow us. We post like behind the scenes stuff for each episode. Or you can also email us. You can email us, I think, what is our email?
We're Just Rambling at Gmail?
Yeah, We're Just Rambling at Gmail. It's also attached to our Instagram page. So if there's something specific that you want to know about or you'd love to hear us dive more into, by all means, just shoot that our way and we'll take that into consideration as well.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, we've got things that we want to talk about, but then we also sometimes don't know what we're going to talk about yet. So if somebody wants to hear something specific, I mean, that's a perfect way for us to be like, all right, this is something we need to talk about.
Yes.
And it gives us a next episode.
Yeah, exactly. And we also want to create content that people want to listen to, and that people are going to be engaged in. And I especially want to create a resource. I want to help people because I feel like what we're doing is so awesome, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So anyway, I think that is it for now. Do you have anything else?
That's all I got.
Thank you so much, everybody that has tuned in and listened. Please follow, subscribe, rate if you can. I know we're available on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, so I believe on those 2 platforms you can leave a review. Please do that. Share it if you are enjoying this. Share it with somebody you think might enjoy it as well. That would be super, super cool. Thank you for continuing to listen.
If I had one of those little director things, it's cue the music.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you later. Bye.